Deep they delved us, fair they wrought us, high they built us, but they are gone. The Lord of the Rings Online, or LOTRO, is an MMORPG released in 2007, and it remains, in my humble opinion, one of the best adaptations of Tolkien's world. In this video, I will try to show you the hidden or not so hidden details that make the world of LOTRO so immersive and lively. This time, we'll take a look at Eregion, the ruined elven kingdom where the Rings of Power were originally created. In the last video, the Fellowship was formed and they left Rivendell with 9 companions. After 2 weeks they entered the land of Hollin, or Eregion as the elves called it. They come upon a ridge topped with ancient holly trees, their red berries glowing in the sunrise. Here the company rests for a while and they marvel at the mountains to the south. Gimli explains that the 3 peaks before them house the great dwarven kingdom of Khazad-dûm, now often known as the Black Pit, or Moria in Elvish. The ridge is present in the game and it provides a lovely view of the mountains in Eregion. Throughout Eregion, several campsites of the Fellowship can be found, and traces of their journey towards the Redhorn Pass, which Aragorn wants to cross. The Fellowship feels a wholesome air about Hollin, for much evil must befall a land before it completely forgets the elves if they once dwelt there. The first campsite is quite close to the Hollin Ridge, in a hollow covered with holly bushes, and it's at this site that the Fellowship is disturbed by a flock of birds, who are the spies of Saruman, as also featured in the Lord of the Rings movies. The next camp in the game is quite close to the Redhorn Pass, and it is at this camp that Aragorn and Gandalf are discussing which way they should attempt to cross the Misty Mountains. Aragorn suggests taking the Redhorn Pass over the Misty Mountains, but Gandalf fears it is being watched and wants to take the dangerous road through Moria. During the night, Frodo feels a dark presence flying over their camp, and while he did not know it yet, the enemies they hope to be defeated for a while are on the move again with winged steeds this time, for it is a Nazgul that is flying high above them in the sky. Nothing else particularly happens that night, and the next morning Gandalf decides to try the Redhorn Pass. Not long after starting the climb, the Fellowship is knee-deep in snow. A small distance further and they quickly find themselves in an evil snowstorm and boulders start falling down from the mountain. Soon the hobbits are almost engulfed in snow and Gandalf gives them some Miruvor, a reviving drink made by the elves, and Gandalf has a bottle of it on him. Meanwhile, Boromir tries to make a fire to prevent the hobbits from freezing. He cannot get the faggots of wood that the Fellowship brought with them to catch fire, and Gandalf reluctantly sets them alight, writing "Gandalf is here" in the fire. Their hope of secrecy is now completely gone, along with the hope of conquering the cruel Caradhras. The Fellowship retreats back down the mountain. The Redhorn Pass in the game is also unpassable, and if you visit it you can find the Fellowship's campfire still intact in the frozen snow. The defeat at the Redhorn Pass demoralizes the Fellowship, and they must decide on what to do next. Due to Saruman's treachery, going directly south is no longer safe, and the only way Gandalf sees is by passing underneath the mountains through the mines of Moria. Several members of the Fellowship object to this plan, and while the company is arguing, they hear howls in the dark. The company is attacked by a pack of wolves, and they do battle with them on a small hill. Gandalf ultimately sets the trees on the hill on fire and Legolas shoots down the chieftain of the wolf pack. The company survives, and they decide to leave for Moria as quickly as they can, realizing that they are being hunted. The hill on which the battle takes place can be found in-game, and all the trees on it are charred. Some of Legolas's arrows can also be found in the area as well, and the hill is called the Burnt Tor. Additionally, in a different region in Eregion, you can fight your way into a wolf den and find the charred corpse of one of the wolves present in the attack on the Burnt Tor. After the battle with the wolves, the Fellowship swiftly makes for the walls of Moria. After a while, they find an empty riverbed with a small stream of water inside. Gandalf is surprised to find the course of the river Cyrano, the gate stream, to have run completely dry, for last time he was in the area there was still water flowing through this once mighty river. The Fellowship follows the empty riverbed until they reach a cliff, over which a waterfall used to flow that was called the Stair Falls. The Fellowship climb the stairs next to the waterfall, but they find their way blocked. Where there used to be a small dale, now lies a black pool. The river Cyrano has run dry because a dam has been created at the exit of this dale, which has caused the dale to fill with water. The Fellowship walks around the lake, crossing an ankle-deep narrow creek on the furthest point. After they cross, they hear a bubbling noise, and then no more. After some guessing by Gandalf, Frodo finds the solution to opening the ancient dwarf door, which is glowing in the moonlight from the Ithilding letters written on the door. Just before the Fellowship enters, they are attacked by a mass of tentacles. They fight the tentacles off and run inside, after which the door is shut behind them and blocked by the ancient trees which stood next to the door and are uprooted and thrown against the wall. Now the Fellowship have no choice but to face the long dark of Moria. As you have seen on screen, the details I just mentioned are often present in the game, like the Ithilding doors of Moria, only visible at night, or the narrow creek at the far end of the Black Lake. We will pick up on the Fellowship's path in the next video, where they traverse the extensive tunnel network of Khazad-dûm. The player character, meanwhile, spends some time cleaning up the traces of the camps left behind by the Fellowship. And there are several other things worth noting in Eregion in LOTRO. Until the Fellowship reaches Moria, they travel with Bill the pony, which they use as a beast of burden, and it is the very same pony Aragorn once bought from Bill Ferny in Bree. Going through the passages of the mines with the pony would be impossible, and Sam tearfully has to depart from the animal he has grown so fond of. In The Return of the King, when Sam returns to Bree, he would discover that the pony survived the wolf-infested wilds and found his way back to the prancing pony. In LOTRO, there is a quest where the player character escorts Bill after the poor beast finds himself in a wolf den. The player character therefore plays an active role in getting the pony Sam loves so much back to Bree alive. While it is only touched upon briefly in the Lord of the Rings books, Eregion is more than just the location of the front door of Moria. The Elven Kingdom was founded by Celebrimbor, a great smith and friend to the dwarves of Moria. Sometime during the Second Age, Eregion is visited by what seems to be an elf called Anatar, the Gift Lord, who teaches them the craft of crafting rings of power. After the creation of the rings, Anatar betrays Celebrimbor and reveals himself to be Sauron in disguise. Sauron makes war on Eregion, killing Celebrimbor and taking most of the rings of power, except the 3 of the elves, which Celebrimbor had sent away beforehand, and one of the dwarf rings, which was in possession of the king of Khazad-dûm. While Sauron is eventually defeated in Eregion, the land would never again be inhabited by elves. In the game there are a few story quests associated with Anatar, though he is called Antheron in the game, because the developers of LOTRO do not own the rights to the Silmarillion, where the character comes from. In a session play instance, the player character witnesses Antheron in Eregion during the Second Age, convincing the elven maiden Narmeleth to learn the craft of ring making from him. even though her father opposes this. Narmeleth later plays a very large role in the first story of LOTRO, and in a quest later in the storyline you can find a mural depicting Antheron in the old ring forges of Eregion. Another important name change made in Eregion has to do with the capital of the Elven Kingdom. The city from which Celebrimbor once ruled was called Ost-in-Ethil, meaning the fortress of the Eldar. It lay where the river Cyrano met the river Glanduin. The developers of the game were also not able to use the name Ost-in-Ethil because it's also from the Silmarillion, so the capital in Eregion is called Mirobel, which means Jewel Town in LOTRO. A developer confirmed on the LOTRO forums that these two cities are in fact the same, and Mirobel is a stand-in for Ost-in-Ethil. The ring forges where the rings were created are also a part of Tham Mirdain, or the Hall of Jewelsmiths, which is right next to Mirobel. And in these halls the mural of Antheron can be found, like I mentioned previously, and it is the birthplace of all rings of power. Except, of course, the one. Rings are not the only things forged in Eregion. When the player is questing through the region, they will be close to level 50, at which point they unlock the ability to use legendary items. These weapons level along with the player, and the name of the weapon can be chosen by the player themselves, like many characters do in the Lord of the Rings universe. On certain levels, the weapons will need to be reforged to increase the base stats of the weapon. These weapons are clearly inspired from the numerous named weapons in Tolkien's works, and the reforging mechanic is probably inspired specifically by the reforging of the sword Narsil into Anduril. After learning to reforge weapons, the player character will join a company of dwarves attempting to reclaim Moria. The expedition is called the Iron Garrison, and when they arrive at the gates they find it blocked by boulders. Soon they find out the reason for the blockage, as you and the garrison are attacked by the Watcher in the Water, like Frodo was before they entered the mines of Moria. The detail of having to remove rubble from the door corresponds with the events that befall the Fellowship, the only difference being the two trees next to the door. In the book they are uprooted and thrown against the gate, while in LOTRO they are still rooted in the ground. Thank you very much for watching this video. Eregion is an area with a really interesting history, and I really love the way the devs work around the restrictions they have when it comes to the rights of the Lord of the Rings. I hope you enjoyed this video, and while I'm not yet sure on how I'm going to structure the deep dive into Moria, I think you'll see me again soon. If you enjoyed this video, please be sure to subscribe and tell your friends, for I've been really loving the new faces in the comment section lately.